one series that I'm a real big fanboy of is the Shin Tensei series. Now, I bought every single game that I can get my hands on, from Persona for the PSP. That one's actually still in its wrapper, believe it or not. I haven't got a PSP, so I can't play it. And, I've got every single game that I could get on the PS2, Persona 3 on the Fairs, Persona 4, Shin Megami number 3, that's the normal one, not the Fairs edition. Rhys' Core, play for the Digital Devil games, and Devil Summoner. Don't ask me to pronounce the full name of that one, I can't. And even on the DS, which is actually quite a good little game for the DS. Now, I must say, sorry, I just dropped those all over the floor. Thank you to Atlas for bringing these games. Yeah, you had a shaky start. I'm not going to mention the Snow Queen. Your translation is usually pretty top notch, actually. It's a really good example of how to bring a game from Japan to the English speaking countries. Now, the games are always been a little bit different, and I like that. It always keeps me wondering what they're going to bring out next. The series has always been overshadowed by basically the Final Fantasy and the Dragon Quest games. Yes, they're more pretty, those other series, but it's a shame because I always find the writing top notch in the Shin Megami series, and yeah, I just really find it enjoyable to play. Now, a little bit of a backstory on the Shin Megami Tensei series. Basically, it started off as a book called Digital Devil Saga. I believe it came out somewhere in the early 80s, I'm not quite sure of that myself. Now, first game came out in 87 for the the normal Nintendo Entertainment System and MSX. And I think at the moment it's up to about 24 different games. That's not including remakes and Fizz editions. Fizz is short festival, if you haven't guessed. And I think there's actually an anime series, which I don't think it's actually got here yet. Now, although most games in the series of Shin Megami have got really independent storylines, and they don't actually correspond at all, they do have a few common elements. There's always something about demons and mythology in the games. Usually you have the chance of recruiting demons and playing them in your battle party. Other elements usually swap over the game mechanics, and some of the plot themes sometimes swap over, but it's quite rare. Now, I could talk about Shin Megami all day, and I've lost countless hours to this game. Now, what I want to talk about today is the Persona series in particular. Now, Persona series is always based around teenagers that can take a part of their psyche and basically make them into living beings, or personas. Now, Persona is a little bit different to the rest of the Shin Megami series, because believe it or not, the first 3 games actually do link together. Basically, the characters from number 1 do come into Persona 2, and the events of Persona 2 actually are the thing that makes the dungeon number 3. Well, that's what the actual theory is on the websites anyway. 4 seems to be quite independent, but there is a little bit of to and fro on that game. Now, Persona 2 was made in 2 parts. Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment. Now, this is where the problems start, unfortunately. Persona 2, Innocent Sin, was actually never brought over to the English-speaking world. Had a few controversial parts in it, but we'll get onto that later on. We did get Eternal Punishment, but it's a bit like the Parasite Eve series. We only got the second part, and it's like watching a mini-series that you've only watched the second part of. Yeah, you can get what the basic plot line is and what's going on, but you're missing out on those little details that basically make it the actual game special. Now, Innocent Sin was never released, as I said, officially in the English-speaking world, but some fans in 2008ish, I think it was, actually released a fans translation patch. Now, the events of Persona 2, Innocent Sin, is set a couple of years after the first game. You're in a modern-day fictional Japanese city, which is pretty much a Shin Megami staple. Now, also you control your normal silent protagonist, which is always in the Shin Megami games. Now, his path entwines with many other students, and they come along for the ride. Now, at the beginning of the game, you meet a character called the Joker. He's a Jester-like character, and you summon the Joker by dialing your own cell phone number. Now, he will grant any wish that you want, but there is a flip side of this. If you don't have a wish to tell him, or you refuse to tell, he will basically take your soul, or energy as they call it in the game, reducing them to basically shells of their former selves called shadows. Now, the Joker tells the three students that they did something horrible to this guy in the past, but is very angry because you don't know what he actually did. Now, wielding an odd crystal skull, he departs and basically leaves a trio confused and basically wanting to figure out what the hell just gone on. Now, in this game you can also see the start of the social link system, which became a big part of the Persona 3 and 4 games, as many of the choices you have affect the game in the later parts. One of the earlier bosses is actually a battle with the principal of the school. Once the battle ends, the principal jumps out the window and a female student comes in asking whether the principal is dead or not. Depending on what you answer, something will change later in the game. This is first of many choices you do have that will actually affect the outcomes of the plot. Okay guys, I don't want to give away any major plot points here, so I'm going to keep basically this for the first couple of hours. Now, it's a pretty intriguing little tale. Now, the heroes basically find themselves on a mission to save humanity from the Joker and basically other evils later in the game. The story is quite well paced and you'll always find something interesting, and there's always something to keep you on your toes. You'll get a pretty good understanding of these characters as you go along, and believe me, some of these good characters have some pretty dark secrets. And as with most Shin Megami games, you really find out there's really no good guys, but many shades of grey. Now, this game itself was actually a turning point of the series, as it was the first game not to be shown from the first person when you're exploring. Now, this has become quite common, but this was the first one. Now, there is a bit of level grinding to this one, but since the combat is basically an improved version of the first Persona game, it's not too bad and it fixes most of the problems I had with the first Persona. And to make combat faster, they've actually included an option to switch off the animations. But combat wise, it's a pretty standard RPG. You got attack, magic, items, escape, stuff like that. Now, your Persona is your magic in this game, and pretty much all the Shin Megami games have really weird names for the spells. Now, it's not bad for serious veterans like me, but the names are pretty consistent between games. But for newbies, it does make the start a little bit difficult until you actually figure out what's going on. Graphics are pretty good. Cutscenes are beautiful, but in the game graphics were good for their time, but were always overshadowed, as I said before, by the Final Fantasy games. But you got to remember, this game only comes on one disc, and compared to the Final Fantasy VII, which packed in 3 discs, they've actually put a lot into this game. Music is brilliant, but for the Shin Megami series, that's always been their strong point. Music's always been great. Just like most Shin Megami games, the difficulty actually starts pretty easily, but ramps up really quickly. So if you're finding that you're getting yourself killed in a new dungeon, don't worry, it's pretty normal for these games. Go out, gain a couple levels and try again. Now, one of the most unique features of this game is actually the rumour system. You can spread rumours through any of the rumour mongers spread around the game. Really good idea. They can totally change the game, especially when a certain character from our past comes in. More on that later. Definitely use them though, they're great fun to spread around.